What I'm going to talk to you today is about the CMA and why we develop guidelines for Canadian doctors, but also a bit more about the context of social media and physicians. I've been lucky enough as part of my job to spend a lot of time on social media, a lot of time on Twitter. One of the disadvantages of being the lecturer is I can't tweet while I'm actually giving the presentation. So anybody who wants to tweet while I'm speaking, feel free, because I can't. But because I spend a lot of time on Twitter, I'm able to track a lot of the information that's going on worldwide around social media and trends around physician use and patient use. So that's, I think, one of the advantages I bring to the particular role I play. The subject of the lecture today, Blue Ocean and Hidden Reefs, nobody's actually asked me what this means, and I've given a similar presentation before. Blue Ocean is taken from a management book that talks about blue ocean being the area where no one else is. If you're in business and you want to compete with other organizations, you go to a space that you can occupy where no one currently is. And to a large degree, social media, that's what's happening with a lot of different groups, a lot of people. It's a blue ocean to a lot of people where you can go and really stake out a claim to this area because it's still being explored. And of course, hidden reefs refers to all of the pitfalls and downfalls you can get into with social media, using social media sites, using social media tools if you're not prepared and you are unaware. And unfortunately for physicians, there are more reefs than for other people. So what I briefly am going to talk to you about today is a general overview in doctors and social media, my take on where the profession stands right now. And then a little bit more depth about why doctors needed social media guidelines, why the Canadian Medical Association felt they had the right, or they felt it would be appropriate for them to develop these guidelines, and then talk a little bit about the final product, what we came up with for the profession. What do we know about doctors and social media? Frankly, not a heck of a lot, especially in Canada. There's a lot of surveys you see out there about doctors' use of social media. You'll see surveys coming up on Twitter every week saying 90–95% of the medical profession is using social media. But when you dig a little deeper, you'll find what they're referring to is that doctors use the internet at home. Some doctors use Facebook at home. They use other social media tools, but they're not really using it professionally. So what we do know is that doctors mirror the rest of society in their use of social media for personal reasons, especially from a demographic perspective, that every young doctor, just like every young medical or student in any other profession, uses social media to communicate with their peers. I don't think there's a medical school class in Canada that doesn't have its own Facebook page. It's very prevalent for personal use. And we are finding increasingly some doctors are learning how to use social media professionally, how to use it to benefit patient medical care in general. The Canadian Medical Association, this is a little old and a little small, but it's one of the only surveys done of Canadian medical profession and their use of social media for professional reasons. It's a survey we did at the end of 2010. We have what we call an e-panel, where we ask our members, doctors in Quebec and elsewhere, if they're willing to sign up for the e-panel and to contribute regularly on questions where we want some input. And a couple of years ago, I thought it would be good to get some insights on what they're doing with social media. So we had 647 respondents. You'll see here the second bullet. By far the most interesting finding was that 80% of them felt that social media poses legal or professional risks to them. You always have to take this away, that this is one of the underlying concerns the profession has and why you're not seeing them a lot on using social media yet. Use of social media professionally, from our respondents, the figures I think are actually too high. We had 11% of the respondents saying they were using Twitter professionally, 22% saying they were using other social networking sites, and 1 in 5 of them said they kept a blog for professional reasons. I think we probably had a skewed response to this survey of doctors who are actually engaged and actually understood what we were talking about when we said the word blog. because there still are practicing physicians who don't know what you mean when you say the word blog or Twitter. So I think we had a biased response rate here, but it shows you what we took away from, as I say, one of the only surveys done of Canadian doctors to date in this area. I'd always be keen in seeing more work if anyone's got a wider sample size. And we had a lot of people comment on these particular questions. We leave a space at the end of the survey for comments. And they were weighed between 3/4 of the doctors who thought there were real risks towards using social media, and that's why they wanted nothing to do with it, and 1/4 who felt maybe doctors have to learn what's going on here. These two quotes are representative. The one saying, given the weight of privacy issues, social media is a dangerous trap best to be avoided. Where on the other hand, there were a few doctors who said, social media is very important to us and it should be harnessed. I greatly welcome this for patient-patient and physician-physician interaction. You'll notice this particular respondent didn't say physician-patient interaction, which is the area that a lot of people are really interested in. Why do physicians need guidelines in this area? One thing is that social media is ubiquitous. Everybody's using social media. It's spreading through all areas of what people are doing. And so it's something that doctors can't really ignore. And there are, as we know from a lot of surveys, increasing use by the public and patients using social media to look for information around health issues. And those of you who know certain websites, who've heard of websites like Patients Like Me, where patients very freely share their own medical information with other patients so that they can get a better understanding of their condition. These sites are growing hugely. In some disease conditions, they have tens of thousands of patients on these sites, very freely sharing their medical records, sharing everything that's going on with them in their experience, because they found, it's empathetic for them. They like to share with the other patients, and they get valuable feedback. Some of the databases and some of these websites is big enough that people like pharma companies, if they can get permission, are starting to mine them to register side effects that are not showing up other places about drugs, or how patients are responding to certain therapies. So patients are using and developing these websites at an incredible rate of growth. And as I said earlier, physicians really are uncertain about how and why to use social media, and communicating through social media, as I noted again, can put them at risk if not used properly. There's some interesting issues. Just this week something came up. There was a letter to the editor published in JAMA where someone had done a survey of physician licensing authorities in the US, and found I don't know the exact figures, but 50 out of 58 states, certain doctors had been disciplined because of inappropriate online behavior. None of this is really a surprise. The primary one was how a lot of doctors get into trouble, which is inappropriate interaction with patients. These doctors were sending emails to patients directly in their care that they shouldn't be sending, and they were doing that online. The other issue is doctors were marketing themselves and what they were doing inappropriately online, and they were misrepresenting themselves online. This is a reference to online as opposed to social media, but it's an indication of how easy it is for doctors to fall into trouble in this whole digital era. Why the CMA? For those of you who don't know, Canadian Medical Association is a national volunteer nonprofit organization representing all Canadian physicians. We have about 75,000 members. In Quebec, it's slightly less, but in most provinces, pretty well every doctor chooses to be a member of the Canadian Medical Association. We lobby at the national level, both for physicians and for a better healthcare system. And you'll see that the address 1867 is the year the CMA was formed. We were formed in the same year as Confederation. The first meeting was in Quebec City in 1867, so we'll be coming up to our 150th or so anniversary fairly soon. It's a long-standing organization. And we've had a sort of a long history of providing policy guidance for physicians. People think of the CMA, a lot of people think of the CMA primarily as an advocacy organization, but we also do a lot of policy and research work. And this goes right back to the founding of the CMA. The Canadian Physicians' Code of Ethics was adopted back in 1868. And the CMA has also developed policies on other issues that doctors have to deal with in day-to-day practice or in academic practice, such as relations with the pharmaceutical industry, medical professionalism, and a couple of years ago we published some guidelines on electronic communication with patients. So it's not out of the realm of understanding or relevance for us to be developing guidelines around social media. There is already some guidance in Canada for doctors, but it comes from the regulatory authorities, those groups that license doctors. In a couple of jurisdictions, they've come out with fairly strong guidelines for physicians, but these are very much of the thou shalt not sort of thing, that they're telling doctors very carefully what they should be looking out for and how they can get into trouble if they use social media. The regulatory authorities who license doctors aren't in the business, and they're not established by governments to tell doctors, here are the potential benefits of this exciting new world. They're there to point out where you could get into trouble, where you could potentially lose your license. The BC College of Physicians and Surgeons has probably the most extensive guidelines. They came out a couple of years ago. Very, very good, but they are terribly one-sided. The Canadian Medical Protective Association is the group that provides malpractice insurance for doctors. They also have come out with guidance, and here again, it's along the lines of, we'd rather you didn't, but if you're going to think that you want to be using social media, here's what you need to look out for. It's not really a balance of here are the dangers and here are the benefits. The US, British, and Australian, New Zealand medical associations have already come out with social media guidelines for their respective members over the last couple of years. I'd recommend especially the ones from the Australian, New Zealand medical associations if you're working with medical students, because they're geared, or if you are a medical student, because they're geared very much towards students. And they use vignettes, and they show how you can get into trouble if you post Facebook pictures of your class and people pick up on it, and people, residency heads who are looking for you to enter residency find those pictures of you drinking at university. They're the sort of things they caution the students about. But they do talk about the benefits as well, although the American Medical Association guidelines were widely criticized for being very stringent, very unhelpful. And there's also a proliferation of hospital healthcare institutional guidelines. I'm not sure whether McGill has guidelines with its medical school for use of social media by its faculty, but I know a lot of universities are starting to develop sort of faculty guidelines around the use of social media. So there's been no guidance for Canadian physicians focusing specifically on the medical profession and providing a part of the sentence which appears to have gotten lost off the slide, which is providing a balance for doctors about both the risks and the benefits. And that's what we felt was lacking in the context of the Canadian medical profession. There's just nothing out there talking about both sides. And surprisingly, you go around the world and most guidelines tend to be more prescriptive. They're telling you more what not to do. You go anywhere on Twitter, the internet, you'll see everywhere people are urging doctors to start using social media more. It's not just the patient advocates. Everybody is urging doctors, telling them you should be out there talking to your patients online. You should be using social media to engage with your patients. And unfortunately, they just don't really understand why doctors aren't jumping into this with both feet. And there are, as we know, there are a number of reasons why they're not doing so. Just a quote here from our president. This is an upcoming issue of Canadian Health, which is actually, it's a waiting room magazine we have for patients that comes out both English and French. And it's sort of the Canadian Medical Association current position on social media. This editorial actually won't be published till next week. And Dr. Haggie's saying, don't expect your doctor to friend you on Facebook, But don't be surprised as you see more and more doctors using social media tools in ways that can make everyone's health better. And I think that's the key, one of the key points, that where doctors can be very effective is helping and giving guidance to the system as a whole. The last place you're going to see social media used is an individual doctor working with an individual patient. There's a number of reasons why social media is can be a disastrously bad thing to be communicating with a patient about their own health issues. And, you know, everybody would rightfully ask, why wouldn't they be doing it face-to-face? And indeed, that's what they should be doing. So when we talk about doctors and social media use, we're not really talking about interaction between an individual doctor and an individual patient. We're talking about a number of other areas where doctors, we think, can have a beneficial impact by using social media tools. And I'll be getting to that in a second. This is our process we went through at the CMA to get this approved. I'll go through this very quickly, but we are, as I said, we're a nonprofit organization run by a volunteer board of physicians. So we asked the board to develop, as staff, we said there's probably a need for this. Can we develop social media guidelines? We had an internal staff team, which included our chief legal officer working on this. And then we went out, we prepared a draft, and then we went out to all of the other medical associations in Canada, the QMA, the Royal College, the College of Family Physicians, the interns and residents, and asked for their feedback. Did our guidelines make sense? Did they see anything they didn't particularly like? Most especially, we went to the Medical Protective Association and to the group that represents the licensing authorities and asked them for feedback. We got some very useful feedback from certain groups. The licensing authorities said your document really isn't appropriate for us to endorse, so we can't. The CMPA doesn't endorse other people's documents, and they said we can't, but after a bit of back and forth, they said we liked your balance of what you're coming forward with. Initially, they said you're too much on the rah-rah side of social media, and you could get your members in trouble if you come out with this first draft. So we put some changes in based on their feedback. And this was approved by our board of directors in December. I'll be putting up the URL at the end of the presentation if anybody wants it. But it can also easily be accessed through cma.ca on the homepage. There's a link to the document. So that's our guidelines that we've now been disseminating to our members and urging them to read. We're not a regulatory body. We don't force doctors to do anything. So we sort of call this rules of engagement. We urge doctors to read this because we based it on best practices for what other groups were saying and what's going on around the world. But this isn't law, and no physician in Canada is bound to follow these or not. The highlights of our final document. Firstly, we had a preamble. We have a paragraph at the front in bold letters saying, this only contains guidance, as I was speaking about a minute ago, and any regulations from provincial licensing authorities should take precedence. So it's saying if your licensing authority is coming out with something that's counter to what you have here, then listen to them, because if you don't listen to them, you can lose your license. For instance, in New Brunswick, last year they came out with something saying, we think there's absolutely no reason for any doctor to be using Facebook, which is interesting because we know probably most doctors are using Facebook at home. And so we're not about to tell doctors to use, we're not about to tell a New Brunswick doctor to use Facebook if they can get in trouble with the licensing board in New Brunswick for using Facebook. So we put that up front and central. It detracts a little maybe from what we think is good guidance on our part, but it's essential to protect physicians who are a self-governed profession, and I take that very seriously. Three main focuses within the guidelines. The first is to protect patient confidentiality. You'll see that in any guidelines, in any country, from any body, any organization. The patient confidentiality absolutely has to be protected. You can so easily, so quickly get on the sliding slope of getting into trouble if you get away from that, and that's critical for any doctor to keep in mind. Even, putting pictures, it's incredible what some people are doing. In the US, some nurses were posting on Facebook pictures of patients in the operating room while they were unconscious and putting them on their Facebook page, commenting about how dumb some of these people looked. with their friends, and of course it got back to the nursing authorities, and the people lost their nursing licenses. You know, it's not only really rude and unpleasant, it's just a dumb thing to do. But you can also get into trouble if you're somewhere in PEI and you talk about a very rare case on your social media site, a very rare case you've seen, you don't identify the patient. But if you're the only cardiac surgeon in Somerstown, PEI, and it's a cardiac case, it's going to be very easy to identify the patient just by figuring that out. And certain people will do that. We warn doctors that social media is forever. Anything you put up there is going to stay up there, and anything you do on Facebook or Twitter, even though you may have intended it for a small group of friends, you know, other people are going to link into it. And this is advice I hope we all know as we're using social media for our own personal reasons. That A, it's forever, it's always going to stay up there, and B, people are going to see this. You don't necessarily intend to or want to see this. So just to stress that we, like every other body, are stressing the need to protect patient confidentiality. The other interesting issue is retaining professional and personal boundaries. Here's the area doctors, when they get into trouble, it's usually for breaching those boundaries. It's dating a patient you have. That's likely to have you lose your license quicker than anything. So you've got to maintain those boundaries. And it's very difficult to do in social media, because social media is all about breaking down boundaries. It's breaking down who you are as a professional and what you do personally. It's very easy to merge those two. So we have to caution doctors to go about this quite carefully. There are ways of setting up a site for yourself as a professional as opposed to a personal, as opposed to who you are as a person. But it's like being a doctor in a small town. Everybody knows who you are and everybody knows your business. It's the same as being when you're on social media. And I've got to tell you, one of the most insightful discussions I heard about this was at the Canadian Psychiatric Association annual meeting last fall, and it was a seminar put on by 4 McGill psychiatric residents. Very thoughtful students who were talking about how they're using social media and how they're learning about it in the context of professionalism. I think McGill and some other medical schools now, they're not teaching courses on social media for their students, but they're talking about it in the context of ethics and professionalism. And I think that is where it truly fits. So this whole retaining professional personal boundaries, we recommend it, but I think it's going to be more and more difficult to do. And that issue of being able to be a professional and then having a personal life once you get involved more, as social media becomes more and more prevalent in the world, I think it's going to become more and more difficult. And the third point is respecting copyright law. We have to remind physicians, just like everybody else, that you can't go around taking huge chunks of other people's literature or other people's photos and posting them on your sites without getting appropriate copyright permission. Even though it may be only intended for your friends on Facebook, here again, if it gets back to the wrong people and you haven't gotten permission to use those photos, you can get into trouble. This is where, I don't know if any of you know about Pinterest, the big new site where everybody posts their photos, but 90% of the photos on that site, nobody's gotten appropriate permission or copyright to post those photos. So Pinterest is never a site that we'd be recommending our physicians use, because most of it's in contravention of copyright. And I think it's going to be run into a lot of trouble down the road. And it's one of those things that doctors aren't taught to look out for copyright. It's not an area that they really learn about. So it's one of those areas where we caution them about. And as I say, what's unique about our guidelines, we think, is we talk about some of the potential benefits of social media for the medical profession. One is improving communication with patients. As I said earlier, not with your individual patient about their individual problem, although there are a couple of Dutch doctors who very successfully piloted using Twitter to deal with patients on their patients' actual own health issues. And it worked very successfully as a pilot project, but what we're more talking about here is communicating with larger groups of patients. If you're an expert physician and you have an area you really want to talk about and bring more informative information to the internet and to social media sites, This is where doctors can bring a lot of value. Also, the ability to deliver important public health messages, say around vaccinations or issues like that. It's something, social media information spreads very quickly. If you have important messages, it's a great communications vehicle for getting it out there and getting it disseminated among various groups. Quicker to medical expertise. I don't know, I should change this slide because I didn't understand it last time I read it either. So I'll skip to the fourth point. And that is improving the quality of medical information available. I'm not sure how many of you spend a lot of time cruising medical sites online for health information, but a lot of it is of fairly dubious quality. It's not well referenced. It's by interest groups on the one hand who think they know what they're talking about but don't. And on the other hand, it's by vested interests. It's by pharmaceutical companies, and not even so much pharmaceutical companies as natural health product companies who are, I'm not trying to say this in any way about all natural health companies, but a lot of them are trying to sell snake oil online. A lot of people are still putting cures for cancer online on their websites and disseminating this in social media discussion groups. People will actually plant comments in social media, in debates, or on patient websites discussing health issues. So there's a huge benefit for more evidence-based information around medicine and health issues online. And that's where physicians, we think, can bring a benefit here. They are trained in this area. As long as they stay to things that they actually know about, they can bring a lot of value by posting information online. One of the big growth areas physicians have been involved in is on YouTube. A lot of doctors have been posting sort of procedures, not how to do it yourself, although some people are doing that, but also about how a certain procedure is going to work, more patient education. Here is what is going to be involved in a particular procedure. So although there are, the dubious ones are how to take out your own gallbladder on YouTube, which you will see as well. But there is a huge patient education component around social media, and we think the medical profession as a whole can play a big role in this area, just in disseminating this type of information. And we left doctors with 4 rules of engagement around if they're going to be involved in social media. Here's what you've got to keep in mind. One's understanding the technology in the audience. If you're going to use Facebook or you're going to use Twitter, you need to read the privacy guidelines. You need to read what you're getting involved in. You need to keep up to date when they go around and change the privacy guidelines, as Facebook and Google Plus and people like that have done. You can't just get involved in these sites and then ignore them. We're telling the doctors, if you're going to use this as a tool, it's like any other tool. You have to understand it, and you have to know how it works. And then you need to understand the audience you're trying to reach. You need to have a good understanding of who you want to talk to when you go into the social media world. And there is a global audience out there, and it's great with tools like Twitter. You can self-select to a degree the audience you want to be talking to, but you've got to understand your audience. Be transparent. We tell our members that they should identify very clearly who they are when they go online. There was some debate in the physician community a year or two ago about the appropriateness about being anonymous online. But there seems to be a growing consensus that it's best to identify yourself very clearly when you're online. And if you're working for another organization, you should say that. And you should very clearly have a disclaimer saying that your opinions are your own. And I hasten to add, I didn't say that at the start of this presentation, but although I did help the CMA develop the guidelines, what I'm saying now are my own opinions. And I think they're based on some degree of information, but I'm not speaking as a spokesperson for the CMA because we only have one official spokesperson, and that's our president. So being transparent online and in social media is very important, we think. Also respecting others. I mean, it's common sense. A doctor like nobody else should go around flaming people online or swearing at them, or just, saying, even though, doctors are going to be dealing with a lot of people who maybe don't know a lot about the physiology of medicine, or who can't say uvulopalatopharyngoplasty or know what it means. but you should respect that in other people and treat those views with respect, especially if you're getting into discussions with people online. And here again, doctors aren't immune to getting into trouble. There was one doctors only website in Canada that shut down a couple of years ago because they couldn't stop the racist comments on it. And these were doctors speaking only to doctors. So it goes to show that doctors are a human as well, and unfortunately you have to remind them about, just the rules of common decency. And we urge our doctors, to our members, to focus on their areas of expertise. That if they are going to be on social media, clearly identifying themselves as a physician, they should talk about things they really know, because that's where they'll truly bring good value. There's a doctor in Ottawa who has a blog called Weighty Matters. He talks about dietary issues. He's a bariatric surgeon. He operates on patients for weight loss. And he's getting international attention, but he just talks about the issues he knows about, which is nutrition and surgery for weight loss. And he's become actually getting fairly international attention because he's very smart on what he comments about, and he knows what he's talking about. There was a study just out from San Diego this week about the benefits, you may have read this, about the benefits of chocolate and how chocolate helps you lose weight. And he really slammed it. He thought the doctors and the PR people who wrote the press release, he thought it was almost criminal because of the amount of data that they left out of the study and the way they misrepresented the data. And that is where he's bringing benefit to the conversation online, by bringing his particular expertise to issues like that. And there are a few doctors in Canada like that who are really bringing value to the social media world and discussions by focusing on what they know best. This is what I was saying at the beginning of the presentation. This is what we called our guidelines: social media and Canadian physicians, issues and rules of engagement. This will be part of the slide deck, the URL. These are available in French as well. These are translated, and this is where you can go if you want them. Just wanted to talk a little bit more about social media and doctors in general. As I said, there are some real social media peer leaders. One of them is, I just brought this out as an example, is Dr. Mike Evans. He's a professor of family medicine at the University of Toronto. Has a very keen interest in innovation in patient education and how to educate patients better about health. And he thought there was a real crying need to tell people about the benefits of exercise. So he put together a YouTube video on what is the one best thing you can do to improve your health out of all of the healthy behaviors and healthcare, and modifying your health. And he talked about exercise. And he worked with a graphic designer, worked with someone who's doing very nifty video, put this 8-minute video on YouTube, and it went viral after Christmas. It's got 1.5 million hits now or so. I'm not sure if you've run across it. Just phenomenal number of hits because it's smart, it used the right channel, and it's got an entertaining message. So he's sort of one of the people that gets it when it comes to social media. He chooses fairly carefully what he's using. He's using YouTube, doing patient education videos. He's on Twitter. He's a columnist at the Globe and Mail, but he doesn't do a lot of tweeting and he doesn't do a lot of blogging. He picks and chooses what social media he wants to use. The other real interesting group in social media are the patient peer leaders, what they call the e-patients. They're engaged patients. They are patients who usually either have their own health conditions, has been an issue, or a family member, it's been a health issue for them, and they've really taken it upon themselves to go to the internet to take control of their own health and to educate other people. The person I'm picturing here is a guy called Dave DeBronkart. He had stage 4, I think it was, kidney cancer. His doctor told him it was fatal, he was going to die within a month or so. He demanded to get his own medical records from the the hospital where he was being cared for. Couldn't get the records initially. Then got the records, found they were rife with errors. And so he went to another doctor, got the right care. He's recovered, he's in remission. He's doing really well, and he's sort of become the poster boy, if I can say that, for the e-patient movement in North America. And along with the physician he worked with, he's a founding member of what's called the Society for Participatory Medicine. And they are a group where patients and doctors are working together to decide to see how they can use social media, how they can use online tools and digital medicine to help improve the care of patients. And it's a very big movement. There are people across the range of disease entities and across the world who are patients who've taken control of their own health and have become very strong advocates for getting their own medical records, working with their doctors. They're not saying ignore their doctor, they're saying working with the doctor to get their best possible health, and very much using these social media tools to good effect. Couple of very good, another thing about this field is it's changing constantly. If you're on Twitter, you can find something quotable pretty well every week or two around best practices, because the sort of the text is still being written on this whole field, and there's a lot of good stuff coming out. This was published beginning of March by the former editor of BMJ, Dr. Richard Smith, who's a bit of an icon in the medical community, and he had some really good tips on using social media for doctors, and probably good tips for everybody. Don't be banal. Don't self-promote yourself too much. Don't share confidential material, especially about patients. Don't be a troll. Don't break the law, don't commit a libel, and don't overdo it. You know, there are some people who are on there 24 hours a day on social media. You know, we all know our friends of ours who are like that, and there's doctors who are the same way. So he's saying pick and choose and use it judiciously. And you can see there's 2 or 3 other articles like his article that have been out in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and they're really great tips for doctors on how to use social media appropriately. So if you're working with physician groups, I can certainly share some of those links with you when I track them down again. But there are some people who are really giving sage advice to doctors, and they are peer leaders that the doctors tend to listen to. Other resources, by far the best blog around doctors and social media, or even I'd say healthcare and social media, is a site called kevinmd.com. It was started by one doctor who just was blogging about medicine and social media. It's now, he takes in a lot of guest columns around various issues surrounding doctors and social media. So if you go there, you can search by category. It's probably the cutting edge place when issues come up around social media and medicine and healthcare. Very good place to go. And for those of you personally interested in following what's going on with healthcare and social media in Canada, this hashtag site is where people meet. We have a tweet up every week about issues around social media and healthcare in Canada. But at any time, you can connect with people on this particular, by putting this hashtag into your tweets, you can connect with other people talking about healthcare and social media in Canada. And it's a very good site. It's a good way to connect with people across Canada. There's doctors there, there's hospital PR people, there's just patients. There's not a lot of French content, but it is a bilingual site. The people who run the site are very happy to have comments in French as well as English, and they do feed into to bilingual debate on the issues. But for those of you who use Twitter, it's something I'd recommend, because it's a really good place to connect with other people around social media, and that's what social media is all about in a way. And it's just some very interesting discussions go on there. And finally, for those of you who have any grant funding left over or any personal resources, really want to learn a bit more about this, these are probably what I'd say would be the top 3 conferences in the world around healthcare and social media. The first one is Medicine 2.0, which is in Boston in September. It's the World Congress on Social Media, Mobile Apps, and the Internet. A little bit of an academic approach to things. This conference was started by someone called Dr. Gunther Eisenbach from University of Toronto. It was held the first 2 years in Toronto, and then it's been held in Europe and the States. Very good research, pilot research about how people are using social media to try and change patient behavior firstly, and then patient outcomes, which is what we all really want to do. What happens with patients at the end. And it's a great conference where you'll hear pilot studies among small groups of patients, not necessarily randomized control trials, but just pilot studies using the internet, using social media to try and change what's happening in health. Second conference is Doctors 2.0 and You, and I'd highly recommend this one because it's in Paris. So it's a great conference in end of May in Paris. It's probably the only conference in the world focused on doctors specifically and how they're using social media. And the organizer brings in physicians from around the world. I'm on a panel with a doctor from China this year on this. About 400 delegates. Here again, not so much pilot research, but more talking about the issues about doctors in healthcare. And the last one I pegged is, it's called HIMSS. It's the Health Information Management Systems Society. They deal more with electronic medical records. The conference was held last month in Las Vegas. They had 31,000 delegates. It's mainly dealing with electronic medical records, electronic health records, but they've got a very vibrant stream now dealing with social media. Here again, it's a very good conference. Also, again, it's a very good website. If you're interested in EHRs, EMRs, this is the organization in the US that comes out with a lot of the definitive documentation, a lot of good white papers, a lot of good commentary about what's happening in the US now with Obamacare and the fact doctors can get paid from putting EMRs in their office. But for this particular presentation, it does have a very good social media stream. And I think I'm about at the end of my presentation here.